One APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt.
Everyone out in front. My name is Annette, and I am the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress, and I am still here in Carson City, out in front of the legislature. Actually, I'm inside of the legislature because it's been raining on and off all day, and so I decided to do it inside again today. We are still waiting to see what is going to happen in the Senate today with the A's bill. I have been here since 11:30, waiting, caucusing, waiting, caucusing. Senate still doesn't have anything out. Saw them putting a podium up, saw them maybe getting ready for another committee of the whole. Unclear. Heard they might do something in the assembly tomorrow, but it's all kind of hearsay at this point. So we're going to make this a very quick out in front tonight. We will not be back out in front tomorrow because I know there's a very important hockey game that is happening tomorrow night. But we will keep you updated throughout the week on what's going on at the legislature. Christina and I are here all week. I will not be coming home until it is done, and we have sine died the second special session. So Christine, I want to bring you in. Christine is with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. She's always my partner up here fighting the dumbest things possible. Christine, welcome back to the show. So glad to have you. Talk to us about what we're waiting on and kind of what we're hearing from the Senate today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back, Annette. I feel like it's the two of us holding it down here in the second special session. But we are just really waiting to see what the Senate is going to do next. So the Senate did have a hearing on their first day for SB 1, which is the reintroduced version of the A's bill from the regular session, which I think was SB 509. And so they did the whole hearing, but the next step in that process is for there to be a work session and them to make any amendments, changes to the bill before it gets voted on and then sent over to the other house. But we've been waiting for days to see the Senate take their next steps. So maybe we'll see that tonight.
So Christine, are there any amendments that I know my answer to this question, but are there any amendments in your mind that could polish this turd enough to make it something that progressive, something that you and I would be comfortable with?
I mean, I have a wish list of things, but I'm not quite sure that they're going to get in this bill. What we're hearing for amendment-wise are things that they asked a lot of questions about the community benefits agreement, because none of that is actually laid out in the bill at the moment. It was just things that the A's said they would do, as well as some conversations about what infrastructure and transportation looks like. And I think the transportation piece is something we're definitely interested in following, because we know that the traffic is really bad already in those areas. I've been shocked for them to say that most folks are going to walk to the games, which seems like a very unlikely thing to happen in the summers of Las Vegas. So if there can be major investments in public transit, that's something we would like to see. But when it comes to the amendments, what I'm hearing is nothing that big.
Yeah, one of the amendments that I was hoping to see, not that I would ever in a million years support this bill, but if you're going to polish a turd, let's polish it. Making the A's actually pay the live entertainment tax. It's something that all sports teams in Southern Nevada are exempt from. So if you go to the Raiders game at Allegiant Stadium, they are exempted from paying the live entertainment tax. But if you go to Taylor Swift at Allegiant, you have to pay the live entertainment tax. I've never understood why they were exempted from it. I know NASCAR was the first, because this was put in place when I worked for Congresswoman Titus when she was the minority leader. But talk to us about why them paying the live entertainment tax would be one of the least things that they could actually do to help our community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a major source of income that we would be missing out on, especially with all of the kind of tax breaks that they're given in this proposal. But no amendment, I think, is really going to come and address the thing that is the biggest concern, which is taxpayer-funded private, like public partnerships on the stadium when it's owned by a billionaire who can afford to build a stadium on his own.
Okay, so as it stands right now, today, based on the bill that we saw, when was that? Thursday? Wednesday? I don't remember the days.
I think it was
anymore.
Wednesday last week.
It's all blending. Me and Brian were talking about this before the show. He wrote Happy Thursday because none of us know what day it is because it's all blending together for us, and we were laughing about it. Same here. I think it was Wednesday. So talk to me about what still is currently in this bill and what this proposal looks like.
I mean, this proposal is, I think, almost exactly as what came out of the regular session, which was heard and got lots of feedback from legislators that it wasn't something that people were really excited about. And nothing changed between them bringing it from that place to the special session. So I think we heard during the first hearing that there were a lot of concerns that there's lots of pieces missing from the proposal. But the proposal does give the A's, I think it's $380 million in public funding and like bonding support in order to build the stadium. And then it requires them to be here for at least 30 years. And then after that 30-year time period too is I think when some of those repayment pieces are kick in. But there's a lot of pieces that are missing.
Yeah, so I've got an outline here. I'll actually go through those really quickly. So there's a resort corridor homeless prevention assistance fund to be created by the county. Unfortunately, that'll allow them to essentially do sweeps of the strip and remove homeless people, which I still have a huge problem with. And so I hope they took a look at that. The community development plan, like Christine is talking about, which is requiring the development of partnerships and the A's to develop community benefits plans with different stakeholders in the community. And there's also going to be an oversight committee to enforce some of that plan. One of the bigger problems that I have, and this was the same problem I had with the Allegiant Stadium deal, was the confidential records. And the keeping the books confidential. We actually saw in Tampa, one of the stadiums that was built there for their Major League Baseball team, their books were kept closed and they didn't realize that the stadium was actually underwater, and it was a huge problem. So if this is going to be publicly funded, the public has a right to know where the funding is going and how it's being spent in our minds. There's also a ton of exemptions in the bills for contract, leases, management agreements, sub-agreements, several things like that. We do know that labor has some agreements with them, which is good, because we obviously, if this thing gets built, we always want our union brothers and sisters to have, the ability to build. But there's a lot of those types of agreements that'll be baked in. Bonds, what is going to be used to pay the bonds and the taxable services within that special tax district that they're going to create to be able to pay back those bonds. We heard from Assemblywoman Constantine about how all of the tax revenue that's generated in that special tax district will then go back into paying off those bonds, which is obviously a problem because, those property taxes and other things won't go to the state for quite some time. There's also the transferable tax credits that'll be there. The transferable tax credits cannot exceed $36 million per fiscal year and will not exceed $180 million in total. So that's still in there. So there's a ton of stuff in this bill. And one of the things that is important is right now, it's not site specific and it's not team specific. So, Major League Baseball meets on Thursday, and the owners are meeting on Thursday to determine if we're supposed to get this team or not, because the owners still have to vote. They haven't even done that yet. And we can only lose 7 of the owners. And if we lose 7 of the owners, they actually can't move. So they could technically pass this deal, and then the owners of the Major League Baseball teams don't let them move. So there is no guarantee, even if we pass this, that this is something that Major League Baseball allows, which is the most insane, ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So there's still a lot of moving parts here. One of the things I heard today, Christine, is that there will be some amendments coming potentially around infrastructure, minimum investments for community benefits, like actually writing those into the bill, potentially the board makeup, potentially making the site location specific so they can't move around, and then changing up how they do the bonding. What are your thoughts on that, Christine?
I mean, I think those are the things we heard legislators ask a lot of questions about last week. But including minimum information doesn't seem like a good enough change to me to move the proposal forward, and we'll see if those are good enough proposals for the legislators.
Yeah, I think the longer this stays in, the more frustrated I know the minimal amount of lobbyists who are in the building, because it's literally us against like all the biggest lobbyists. And then, the press who's still in the building, it's the legislators who are stuck here in the building. I know they're infuriated about having to stay here. So what's kind of the vibe around this right now, and how are you feeling things are moving and things are going to shake out in all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think things are moving fairly slowly despite folks being quite grumpy having to be there. I think folks might have seen that the speaker over the weekend posted some more details about how this process has been going. And it seems as if the legislature was unaware they were going to be called back in for the special session. So they were not prepared to be staying more days. The conversations that they had with the governor was that maybe this could take place later in the summer, once there'd be more time to vet and edit this proposal, because it had only been a couple of weeks since we heard it in the regular session, and there were a lot of questions about it then too. There's a lot of frustration, I think, about the process that's currently existing in the building.
Yeah, and the fact that it hasn't even made it out of the Senate yet, which is where it's starting. I'm getting a lot of questions. Well, why can't they? I have one in the chat right now. Why can't they just kill this bill? Why can't they just kill this bill? Why can't we just be done with this? Or why can't they just pass this bill and be done with this? Talk to us about like that piece of the process and why they can't just get this over with, as much as my soul wishes they could, so I could drive home and be with my dogs.
I mean, they have to follow that formal process that we go throughout the regular legislative session too. But I think the other reason why they're vetting this is because it's a priority for the governor. The governor called this special session to have this conversation, and there are a number of bills that the governor still has not signed. So we know that there are still probably negotiations happening between legislative leadership and the governor's office. Because that deadline for bills to be signed from the regular session isn't until midnight of this upcoming Friday.
Okay, so we've got bills still in front of the governor. We've got a bill here in the legislature that the governor wants. Maybe the legislators are pissed off about. Talk to us about how those dynamics work together and how the power dynamics are working together.
Well, I think we also have seen there's been some miscommunication between the different offices. And so I think that might also be pushing the delay further in ensuring that we are getting clear communication between the governor's office and legislative leadership on what those next steps are and what people are going to agree to, and ensuring that the legislators get that information as to what they're going to be voting for. We saw that happen of their miscommunication at the end of the regular session. And then we came back for, I think, what was the fastest special session ever in history to be less than 2 hours long. And so this is quite a contrast. But I think there's a lot of information and moving parts that everyone needs to be kept in the loop on.
Yeah, and it really behooves all of us if the legislators on both sides, the Senate and the Assembly, are doing their due diligence, vetting this proposal. Yes, I would love for it just to be killed, but there's also more dynamics working with the governor and other things, and so they can't just kill it. So yes, there actually has to be some vetting that takes place. All right, a couple questions coming in the chat. Christine, for you. Do you think that the weekend break and delays today mean that the senators are not holding firm or not wanting this? How do you think that all plays out?
I mean, I think we, as of last week, it did not seem like there were the votes to move this bill forward, and so there needed to be conversations about potential changes. But part of the weekend break was also a number of legislators had not seen their families in weeks, and a number of them, live in Las Vegas and so have to travel back and forth. So people did really need a bit of time to rest and recuperate. I know I needed a bit of time to rest and recuperate. So I think negotiations occurred during that time, but it was also people were not feeling at their best to have this process be moving forward and wanted to be, at the top of their game to have these conversations.
Yeah, I almost think it would have been irresponsible to keep going through the weekend. I know LCB staff, the Legislative Council Bureau staff, who are always my heroes, they have worked tirelessly through session. They were exhausted because they were working all night, many of the nights leading up to regular session, sine die. You and I were talking about how exhausted we were. I think both of us slept all weekend, and then I went to the spa yesterday because I felt like I was going to die. All of our teams are tired, even with them working from home. This process is exhausting. And so I almost think it would have been irresponsible to keep it going, because I don't think we would have actually had a good product. And I think it's important for us I know we want this to be over, but I also think it's important for us to be patient because people need rest and they need to be thinking about this clearly. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that part of me wanted to just keep going and get this conversation over with, but I do feel personally much more rested today and more prepared to be back in the building to have these conversations.
Okay, really good question from Ron in the chat. Could they possibly wait until the June 17th deadline and then kill the bill? And this has been a working theory, Christine, I've had since last week when this nonsense all started, because of that power dynamic we were talking about between the legislators and the governor, especially if the votes aren't there in the Senate or the Assembly or one of the chambers. Talk to us about how that might play out.
Yeah, it's possible. So a special session called by the governor can last no more than 20 days. And so there is a chunk of time that's still available for the session to go through. If that 20 days wrapped up and nothing was done, the governor could potentially call a second special session. But I think a lot of folks have been hearing special sessions are really expensive for the state of Nevada. And so the longer this goes on, the more cost to the state in paying all of the staff that needs to be there, all the supports for the building. And so I think the longer we push it out, the more expensive this deal becomes, not just for the bill itself, but in keeping the legislature running.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a huge waste of time and money. And it's funny, somebody else put in the chat, how much money do you think the governor is willing to waste on this deal? I mean, I think he's willing to waste as much as he can to get his legacy, because this, I think, is very much about his ego and his legacy at this point, because he wants to have a bright, shiny object like Sandoval and Sisolak did. What do you think, Christine?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what pushed at the end of the session was the governor really needing his bills to move, even though they were amended quite heavily at the end. And so this is something that he's listed as a priority for his office. And so I could see there being wanting to really be able to lift this up as an accomplishment for his first term.
Okay, this next question I love, because you can tell the story like I can from the other night, because we were cracking up about this because I was pretty pissed off. Nick asks, where are the A's in these negotiations? Are they making clear what changes they would and would not accept? So I've got a little detail, but do you want to talk about what happened on Wednesday night when that hearing was taking place, Christine, and where certain people were hiding and such?
Yeah, so the A's team themselves has been pretty absent from the building. For the first hearing, they were in the building a couple days later, but they weren't present for the hearing. And then for the hearing this past week, the A's president was actually just watching in the gallery and actually not down a part of the presentation or taking questions. Luckily, some legislators found out that he was up there and called him down to be able to answer specifically for the A's, because otherwise just answering was a political policy, like economic analyst, and then someone who works for the stadium authority already. But there were no A's representatives themselves to be there. Most of the conversations I'm hearing about with amendments are really just happening with legislators. And I don't actually know how active the A's are in the building. because they knew that people wanted there to be changes from the bill during the regular session, but nothing came for the special session bill.
Yeah, and just from being here, Thursday was the last day we were here, and then we were gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday to sleep. I've been back here since this morning. There's been absolutely no A's representatives that I've seen walking through the building. A few of the high paid lobbyists, because they have a lot on their payroll that they're paying to be here, but no one officially from the A's that I've seen. All of the lobbyists that I've been seeing are people I know, people I've worked with for a decade. So no one new from the A's management. Caval has not been here. Fisher certainly has not been here. So we're not seeing a huge presence from them. I also know that I'm hearing rumors that Utah may be now in the mix and maybe wanting to make a bid for the team as well. And I hear that Mitt Romney is in play and a couple other national kind of congressional members are in the mix now, trying to get them to come to Utah and offer them a better deal in Utah. So who knows? I mean, days could move on and we could still have the stadium deal and they would just build stuff. And then if there was an expansion team, the bill would exist. So that could happen too. There's a lot of different moving parts at this point, which is kind of crazy. So yes. Let's keep going because we're getting lots of audience questions, which is great. Quick question. With the budget bill still unsigned and a lot of other Democratic bills and just bills generally, could they wait until Lombardo's veto power lapses and then get passed without signature? So that could be something. Talk to us about how the veto process, just like taking away the stadium for a minute, talk to us about how bills are signed, not signed, or vetoed, because I think, people are still unclear of this end process for the regular session.
Yeah, so bills that got to the governor or that are on his desk right now, there are three things that can happen. The governor can sign the bill so that it becomes law. The governor can not sign the bill, but just let it sit there and it will automatically become law. Or the governor can actively veto it. All of that has to happen by midnight on this upcoming Friday, so end of day Friday. I think folks could wait, and we have seen the governor has also not taken action on a ton of bills throughout this process. So he is also waiting, I think, on things. Heard that the governor was advised not to veto things that were priorities for legislators during this time frame. So they could wait, but that also doesn't mean that he might just choose to veto things because of that on Friday. So I think there's a lot of backroom negotiations probably happening right now.
And to CG's point, because CG kind of follows up with this similar question, can the Democrats trust Lombardo not to veto Democratic bills after the ballpark bill passes? I think that's the point too, right? There's a little bit of like chicken going on here of who's gonna blink first. And so I think you see the Democrats also not trusting Lombardo, because as somebody who's been watching this process for a very long time over many different governors and legislators, I can't tell what this governor is going to sign and what he's going to veto. There's no rhyme or reason for much of this. And so I think the Democrats are also playing a little bit of strategy here to try and see, can we keep some of these priority bills alive if we string this along a little bit? Christine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm just going to mention too, I got a pop-up that the Assembly video is now live streaming. So assuming that the Assembly is just going to come in and adjourn until tomorrow, because they can't do anything until the Senate moves the bill to their chamber. Right now, they have nothing that they can take action on.
Well, goddess willing, something happens. Okay. Richard has a really good question. It feels like the Senate is divided, but generally moving towards a deal based on what we've seen. Even those opposed seem ready to negotiate. What are your take on where the Assembly stands? So let's talk about Senate first and kind of some of the negotiations we've heard a little bit about, and then where we think the Assembly is going to go, Christine.
I do think that there are some senators who are willing to negotiate. There are also some that are very hard-nosed. Ira Hansen had a sign up that he was a no, but then he's a hell no, so it's not even worth trying to talk to him about this proposal. So there are quite a few people who I think nothing will change their mind, and then maybe a few folks kind of on the fence. When it comes to the assembly, I think there are a lot of people who have major questions still. And so when we see another hearing potentially on that side, I think we'll see a lot of people bring up major concerns. And I'm not quite sure that the votes exist at this point, at least on the bill that we've seen, exist to move forward.
Okay. Let's see here. Denny asked, at what point do legislators just throw their hands up and say, you guys can't get it together, get the hell out of here? And I have heard this actually quite a bit, that the A's did not come to this prepared, the lobbyists did not come to this prepared, and it was just kind of a cluster all the way around from start to finish. And they didn't come prepared to have the bill ready to go, but also not prepared to negotiate somehow. I think they just thought they were going to get this and it was going to fly through and everybody was going to be happy. Obviously, they don't know how Nevadans are, that we're stubborn and not going to put up with that nonsense. So talk to us about like kind of what we've seen through this process from the A's, and also the frustration we heard in the Senate the other day. And I think we'll hear from the Assembly too about how embarrassing the A's performance has been over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of when I moved to Nevada 5 years ago, folks told me at the legislature, Nevada's different. And Nevadans really hold outsiders to a very high standard coming into the state. And so the fact that folks have been very unprepared and able to move forward has been, I think, really frustrating for everyone, especially as we're trying to pick up the pieces, and folks who wouldn't normally have to be the ones to make up all these proposals, I think, have stepped in to do so in order to make this process move smoother. But again, like we were just talking about earlier, since the A's folks haven't even been in the building, it's been hard, I think, for them to have those conversations.
One piece that I will flag for everybody that I thought was just, there's been a lot of excellent pieces from the reporters who are doing great work up here to hold them accountable. Look at April Corbin's stuff with the Nevada Current, Steve Sebelius and his team at the RJ. But the one that really stood out to me over the weekend was from John L. Smith. And it was titled, I believe, A Swing and a Miss, from the A's and their presentation that they did on Wednesday last week. We'll put it in the chat. It was such a great article. We've got some other great articles that have come out from our press corps up here, who are really doing great work to cover what is and isn't happening right now. There's a lot of hurry up and wait happening in the building, as you can kind of see behind me. It's basically empty. But, you know, we are out here making sure that we're on top of it, that I'm getting the latest and greatest details to our staff, to our team. We have ads running right now. We will continue to have ads running as long as they're in special session targeting legislators. So if you want to help with that effort, the best way to do that right now is to call your legislators, email your legislators. I think email is actually the best bet because they don't have attachés anymore. They don't have staff anymore. So I would email them. If you've got their phone number, text them. You can look on the legislative website. We'll put the link in the chat too to figure out who your legislators are. But, you know, email them, text them, call them, tweet at them. They're watching social media. We know they're watching social media and they are extra sensitive right now. Make sure you're using the hashtag NVLEG, NVLEG on all of your tweets. We'll put all of these tips and tricks in the chat for you as well. Share them with your friends. Share this event with your friends, out in front with your friends so they know what's going on. We also need people to sign our action kit page, which is a petition that goes directly to your legislators. So we took all of the hard work out of it for you. So sign that. It goes directly to your senator and assembly person. We need you to sign that today so that they continuously are getting emails. So if you're watching this, grab the link from the chat and make sure you're signing that so that this way we can get that out, because we want to make sure that as many legislators are hearing from Nevadans as humanly possible, because they need to hear that we don't want this deal here. So again, sign the action kit page. It'll be in the chat. We have the link in the chat coming up for who's your legislator, for the article I talked about for John L. Smith, for the action kit page that you can sign to email your legislators, and then to figure out who your legislators are. That'll all be in the chat while we're talking right now. Okay, Christine, a couple other questions that are coming in. Love these questions. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Will Fisher and the A's be paying for this special session? I actually think that's a great question, but they don't even want to pay for the road. So why would they pay for this? Christine?
Yeah, I mean, I love that question as well, but find it highly unlikely, unfortunately.
If a billionaire, millionaire, gap baby, Nepo baby can't pay his own way for his baseball team, I doubt that he's going to pay for the special session. I think he's going to let the state be on the hook for that. Unfortunately, Jeremy, we're a very cheap date. Nick asks, what are you hearing about the culinary and other pro ballpark unions? What are they doing behind the scenes? I mean, they're all lobbying. We're in the lobby room with them. They're our friends. We don't fault our union brothers and sisters. I was in the lobby room with the culinary today. They're all lobbying on it the normal way, just like we are. And so, it's a pretty standard lobbying procedure at this point. Christine, have you seen anything different?
No, I mean, I think the one thing I just mentioned is that there are more folks in the building definitely in support of the proposal than folks in the building who are against. It's been really, the two of us and NSEA for pieces like time being. And so, a lot of those folks are, labor unions, but also chambers, other like major business interests. So there's a wide variety of folks who are, engaged in these conversations.
Richard has a funny question in the chat, and it makes me cackle because I'm usually one of these people, Richard, so I apologize in advance. ND Ledge sounds pretty annoyed with Californians by now, even the ones who used to live in Yeager's district. Fair. What are the most effective things they can do right now? And I love that question. There's nothing that annoys Nevadans more than Californians. For some reason, we'll sit here and say, don't California our Nevada, but then we take all of your teams. I've never quite understood how that all works. But anyways, the most effective thing I think you all can be doing right now is you can donate to our ad campaign. All of the money you're putting into the ads goes straight back on the internet to educate Nevadans about what is happening on this deal so they can contact their legislators. $10 goes a long way. We're putting it directly back into the ads. Every time we get a boost on ads, every time we get donations, we do a boost on the ads so that we can keep them going and keep them going into legislators' inboxes. I think the other thing is if you know people in Nevada, have them call their legislators, have them fill out the action kit page to contact their legislators, have them tweet at their legislators. Also amplifying the stuff that Plan is doing, the stuff that NSEA is doing, the stuff that we're doing at BBP, that stuff, the amplification and getting it trending, that's very helpful as well. So those are all things that folks who want to be supportive but maybe don't necessarily live in those districts, that's one good thing that you can be helping us with. Christine, anything you want to add?
I think that makes sense. And I do think like sharing stuff on social media is fine as well when you're not a constituent of the legislators. We've been able to keep things really trending at the top throughout this conversation and having folks, I think, honestly, across the nation watching this at the moment has helped. And so we might annoy some legislators, but I think continuing to share things on social media, the news articles we see that come out, those are also really helpful.
Basically, me and Christine's entire job with our teams is to annoy the legislators, and I don't have a problem doing that. That's what I was born for. So continue to annoy at this point. They're elected officials. They have to answer to their constituents. You need to contact your legislators. And if you live out of state, you need to be amplifying stuff so other people can, because the more education we can do around this issue, like Christine said, there's only two of us in the building, but the difference is we have all of you at home. And that is a huge army behind us that these paid lobbyists don't have. And so we need y'all amplifying this and getting as many people to sign the petition, talk to their legislators as humanly possible right now. That's the biggest help. Okay. CG is asking, is culinary concerned that the site agnostic bill could easily move back to a non-union site like Wild Wild West after the bill passes? For me, that's even a concern, right? I know Christine is concerned about it as well. Our union brothers and sisters at culinary, that's a very important thing for them. Talk to us about why we don't want it to move back to that site, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things why culinary has been supportive and, they're close friends of ours is that there is a deal for the workers at the A Stadium, and they do have a proposal for the folks who are at the Tropicana, which will likely be demolished regardless. of this to move to other union positions in Las Vegas. And so I think we want to ensure that we are keeping good, high-paying jobs at the forefront of all of these conversations.
Yeah, and we also don't want it on a Stations Casino side of land. Stations Casinos has been notoriously hostile towards culinary and their workers and unionizing their properties. And so, despite all of what's going on with the stadium, we always are supportive of what Culinary 226 does. My family was a part of that union for a long time. Maria Teresa on our team, her mom was a culinary worker, a housekeeper for a long time. We all have very deep connections with our brothers and sisters at Culinary. And so obviously we want to make sure if this deal goes through that our union brothers and sisters are taken care of.
Yeah, and I want to mention too that the reasons that we are not supportive of this proposal is not about creating jobs. It's about corporate welfare. We are absolutely in support of creating good paying union jobs throughout the state, but I don't think that we need to subsidize a billionaire to be able to do so.
100%. Okay, this next one's really great. It's from Summer. Has NV Ledge done their own evaluation of whether this is in fact a fiscally responsible bill? And there have been some fiscal notes that have come out that are really weird, like NDOT and some of this other stuff that they didn't have one, which I don't know how that's possible, and just some other weird stuff that's popped up over the last couple of days. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there has been a fiscal analysis provided by the folks behind the bill. So that's who was part of the presentation. But legislators asked a lot of questions about, what assumptions were made in choosing those numbers. I think Senator Harris did a great job just doing some math on the floor about how, to her, those assumptions didn't make sense. And so if we did the math a different way, the proposal would look really different. And so I think we're starting to see more fiscal notes and data analysis from local government, state agencies. I know that the treasurer did present the bill when it was heard during the regular session. So I do think there is some state analysis going on. But what we have heard mostly during the hearings has been from someone who is paid to be in support of the proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question that is really great. This is from somebody else. Oakland mayor has said she's been on the phone with Nevada legislators. I actually saw that interview earlier today. Have you heard her name mentioned at all? And I'll just say, I haven't heard her name mentioned specifically, but I have been talking to other Oakland city council members, and I know they have been talking to people up here. They've been working with us for couple of months now. And so I do know that people are hearing from folks in Oakland as well, and legislators are hearing from folks in Oakland. So curious if you've heard anything on that, Christine.
I haven't heard anything in the building, but I have seen some news articles come out today about conversations that the Oakland mayor is having and the desire to keep the A's in Oakland. And so I think we'll see how that kind of plays out over the next few days.
And we're going to get that article for the Oakland mayor and put it in the chat so everybody can take a look at that and see what we're talking about, because I thought it was very interesting today to see that she is having those conversations. And so we'll make sure that we put that in the chat. And again, share all of these resources with your friends, your family, people who live in Nevada. Retweet us, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're going to be doing another one of these on Thursday, so we want to make sure that we're keeping you all up to date. Okay, next one is from Richard. I've been on Twitter more in the last week than I was in 15 years. Thank you, Richard. Same. NV Ledge always tends to make us do more on Twitter. I'm usually not on Twitter either. This is another good follow-up question from Summer. I know unions testified in support and mentioned the jobs that will come from it, but what happens to the employees that are currently at the Tropicana if they decide on that location?
It's my understanding that there are already relocation plans or like systems within the culinary union to help those folks move to other jobs, regardless.
Yeah, and they'll make sure that they keep their health care, their pensions, stuff like that. So that culinary will make sure that they help with that. And then the site itself would be union if it's built. So again, not that we're supportive of it, but those are the things and the mechanisms that would be in place if that happened. Okay, so let's talk about what's next, Christine. So we are waiting for presentations of some amendments that we're hearing potentially will happen in the Senate, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Then they may take a vote, and then they may send it over to the Assembly. I keep saying may because it's all kind of up in the air right now. So talk to us about process and remind the viewers where we're at in the process, and as we move through this process, how they should be involved.
Yeah, so it's very much like the regular legislative session, except for instead of sending the bill to a policy committee, they convened into what they call the Committee of the Whole, or abbreviated the COW. So they've done the hearing part, but what is next is the work session portion. So any amendments to the bill need to be made, and then they can move it out of the committee. And then once that happens, then the full vote of the legislature or the Senate would take place, and then the bill would go over to the Assembly to start that process over again.
And then remind people how they can be involved with all of that.
Oh yeah. So again, emailing your legislators, participating in social media, really lifting up the stuff we're seeing. And then if the bill does move to the Assembly, there will be another full hearing. And so there will be an opportunity for folks to call in with their testimony or submit written testimony online.
And everybody should do that. You should also fill out the opinion poll online. It's still overwhelmingly in opposition. But we really want Nevadans contacting their legislators. So we'll bump that action kit link again in the chat for you. Please, please, please sign up on this link, especially if you're here in Nevada. That will send an email directly to your legislators, both your assemblyperson and your senator, and they need to hear from you now. So this is pretty urgent. If you're opposed to this, getting this out there far and wide, sharing that link so that people can sign the petition and get it to their legislators is really going to help right now. And keeping up with amplifying our social media is always important. So do that too. All right, Christine, final thoughts on this whole stadium scam and all of the nonsense we've seen the past week.
I mean, I wasn't here for the last stadium special session, but I've been told this is just deja vu. And it's something that we've done before in Nevada. So hopefully we'll be able to move through this conversation quickly and really see if there are the votes to move this bill forward. But I know when it comes to deja vu, you were here the last time around. So does it feel the same?
I've been joking all session that this is my Taylor Swift era tour of my Nevada legislative experience because I am done on June 30th with Battleborn Progress. And literally it feels exactly the same as the last time. The only difference is I actually think there are more legislators who are skeptical of this and more legislators who are asking questions. And this time it's not being rammed through and people are questioning it more, which gives me a lot of hope. And so we need to make sure that our legislators don't cave, and we need to make sure that our legislators hold strong and know that they have support and know that we're going to be here to have their backs and give them support if they vote no. And so it is deja vu, but I think it's a better deja vu this time. So I have a little bit of hope, which is not normal for me. It's weird. Anything else you want to add before we hop?
Nope, I think it's time for us to tune back in and see if those live streams start soon.
Yes, so Senate should be up soon, maybe. So you can tune in on the Nevada Legislative website. You can go on Nellis and the stream should be up at some point, maybe hypothetically at some point tonight. And then the Assembly will probably just adjourn, but you should look for movement possibly in the Assembly tomorrow. We will have live updates for you on Facebook, Twitter, all of our different Instagram, all of our different pages. Make sure you're following all of our pages. Make sure you follow us on our email system. If you haven't signed up to get our emails, please do that. It's a great way to stay in touch, especially so we can let you know when the next hearing is going to be. And of course, Assembly just gavelled in to gavel out until tomorrow. Thanks, Alex, for watching. NSCA forever. Woo, love NSCA. Also, if you don't know about Alexander Mark's meme game, go on his page because his meme game is on point. We've been texting about his memes all day. Anyways, so yeah, follow us along with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll have all kinds of updates for you in the next 24 hours. And we will chat soon, everyone. And we'll be out live in front again on Thursday at 5 o'clock. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great evening. Stay safe and go Knights go tomorrow. Tomorrow's the big day. Go Knights go. Have a great evening, everyone.